Hi, I'm Betsy, Lubbock Master Gardener and friend of the public library, and welcome to another episode of Gardening Tips for Lubbock. As the weather gets a little bit cooler, you may have noticed leaves changing color and starting to fall off of trees. These are deciduous trees. That's the term for trees that rest in the winter and lose their leaves, in contrast to evergreens that stay green all winter. Well, all those leaves that are falling down are really gardener's gold. And today, we're going to talk about what you can do with those leaves that you might rake up and save. So let's go meet Master Gardener Arla Loader, who's going to help us to know more about what we could do with those leaves. Arla, I'm so glad to be with you today. This is Arla Loader, a Master Gardener, and Arla and I were actually in the same Master Gardening class, so we've known each other for a little while.
We sure have.
Yes. Well, we've been talking about all the leaves that are falling down. And so the question is, what can we do with all these leaves?
Well, you had referred to in one of your talks that leaves were yellow gold. And I think that's exactly right. When our compost is made, then we as gardeners call it black gold. So any day is a good day to start a compost bin, but particularly right now as the leaves are falling off the trees, because there's many ways that you can accumulate them. You can get your mower out and mulch it without the catcher and leave those leaves on the grass to go ahead and decay and work itself into the soil. You can catch the leaves with the mower, and then if you want to go ahead and put them on your flower bed, you can. Or if you want to get the particles smaller, dump them out, catch them again, because the smaller the particles, the faster the decay.
And the decay is what we're aiming for to make the soil richer,
Right.
isn't it?
It is. We want to mix our leaves with other things. We call the leaves brown because that would be the carbon. We call the grass and other greens green, which would be the nitrogen. So those two working together will break this compost down along with air and water to give us wonderful amendment around our plants, for our yard, and I give it to friends for putting in pots.
So there's all kinds of uses.
There is. I mainly got into the composting because I didn't want to keep buying potting soil. So about 15 years ago, I started making compost and just loved it. And
so it's cost effective too.
Yes, it is.
So we have all these free leaves falling off the trees, and we can turn them into good soil to enrich what we have.
I've never had a neighbor or friend tell me no if I offer to mow their leaves or rake up their leaves. So it's great. It's
so
great.
when we talk about compost, is there some kind of simple, what is compost?
What is compost?
How do we?
Okay, we were talking about collecting the leaves. I'd like to share a little tip with you that will make collecting the leaves a whole lot easier, because trying to collect the leaves and putting them in bags, and you're by yourself and fighting that bag is very frustrating.
Okay.
So I found a tip I'd like to share with you and let you know what I do, and it's right over here.
So you have a fancy, what have you done here to
Well,
help collect the leaves?
I did. I got a tip and that said take a trash can, a round trash can, cut the bottom of it about 2 or 3 inches from the bottom, and then put your bag into the trash can, bring it over the top, and you can put clips on it if you need to. And then when you gather your leaves, you'll put it in there, and you can use a rake or you can use a tool of some sort, and you mash your leaves down, and that gets the air out of the leaves so that it'll hold a lot more leaves, and that way you don't have to have so many bags. I would suggest though that if you have a bag that has the tie to it, don't tie it in a knot. It's too hard to get loose
Too
later.
hard to get it loose
But when
later.
you've got it done, all you have to do is bring
So
your,
you've got a bag full of leaves
got a
here.
bag full of leaves. I drilled some holes and made me a handle, and I just lift it off, put a new
Okay.
bag in.
And there's your bag of leaves.
There's my bag of leaves.
That would be so much easier than trying to lift the bag up out of the trash can.
It makes a suction that's very hard to work with.
It does.
So-
Good, great tip. Okay. Arla, I really appreciated that tip for collecting the leaves, but now let's get real with compost here.
Okay.
So tell us, what is compost exactly?
Compost is made from organic material, and it breaks down naturally. In the forest, the leaves fall, and through time they decay and enrich the soil. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you what I put in my compost. It consists of browns and greens, browns being the carbon and greens being the nitrogen.
Okay.
There's a list of browns, a list of greens. Now there's some things that you don't want to put in your compost because it would invite unwanted critters, and you do not want to put dairy or grease, meat in your compost.
Those kinds of things that would attract
They
whatever.
do. They do. Also,
Yeah, bugs or rats or mice or something.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. So what I have here are browns and greens, and the greens also are from your kitchen, like your
Okay.
vegetables and different.
Vegetable scrapings and
Right,
things like
right.
that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
So-
show us how to make compost.
Okay, I've got some dried leaves, and we were talking about mulching the leaves, but you don't really have to mulch the leaves if you don't want to. You can have bigger leaves. It's just going to take longer to break down.
Okay, so the whole point of mowing the leaves is to help make them smaller so they decompose quicker.
Yes, it definitely is.
All right, makes sense.
Okay, so I have a tub here for demonstration because it's kind of clear. This is not what I would make compost in. For one thing, this is way too little, and it's just for demo only. So let me show you what I would do. I would take my leaves, and we're going to do lasagna layering. And really, this is the only time we do the layering, because after that, as you add to it, there's no need to layer.
Okay.
So I'm going to
Okay.
first dump in my brown leaves.
And I can see how many of those leaves have been broken up and just, yeah, they're
These-
quite fine.
These have gone through the mulchers several times.
And do you have a special mulcher, or do you just do this with your lawnmower?
I have a lawnmower, but I also have a special mulcher that I use.
Okay.
Next thing I'm going to put in is a layer of paper, and it's gone through the paper shredder.
Now, does this also count as a brown?
Yes, it is.
I mean,
Mhm.
okay.
It
Because, I
is.
mean, it's not,
You can put pieces of cardboard in it. You can put your mail in it. If you've got some envelopes that have the plastic window, you can either take the plastic out before you put it in, or after it's done and you're fixing to use it, you'll see the little bits of plastic.
because that
So you can
won't
take 'em out.
decompose.
It won't decompose,
Plastic
no.
doesn't, takes forever in the landfill, doesn't it?
Yes,
So
it
you have
does.
to-
And that's one nice thing, is we are keeping all of this out of the landfill.
Isn't that,
We're
yes.
getting to use it. Okay, then I have a bag of grass.
So here comes the green.
Here comes green. And grass gets hot very, very quickly. So we've got a layer of that. Then the next thing that I would do is I've got some goods from the kitchen, and I'm going to dump.
Sometimes the flies love this stuff too.
Yeah. There's some cantaloupe, and to tell you, we were talking about why not to put your garden things on the top is
Yes.
because this was a mouse that came and visited. So anytime you put, items from the kitchen, you want to make a hole in your compost and put it in it and cover it back up.
Cover it up.
So
'cause
this
it's
is a green,
attractive.
or
Yeah.
eggshells. You can either break them up or not. I started a Coke and don't want it, so I can put that on it.
That adds some moisture.
That adds moisture. I have a few more.
But I'm assuming you'll take the can out. You're not going to try to
I'll
compost
take the can out. Yes, I will. I'm just letting it
Okay.
drain. And then coffee grinds and the little holders for the coffee grinds.
Because those will decompose as well,
This
won't
will,
they?
yes,
Like
it
paper
will.
towels even.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And then, so I've built this, and then the next thing I would do is water it. Once I have my first layers done, then I want to moisten it. I don't want to drown it, but I
No.
want to moisten it.
Okay.
If you water it and you can pick it up and squeeze it and water comes out, that's too much water. You want it to be more like a wrung out sponge where it's damp.
Okay, and that just hastens the
It
decay.
It
and the
does, and it
deterioration.
also has to have the air and the water and the materials all work together. So
Great.
I would take my water
Right.
and I would just slightly, enough that I feel like it goes through, kind of to the bottom, because my container is going to have holes in the bottom.
Not this demonstration container, but what you'd actually use would
Right.
have holes. So that-
Then I would layer again until I run out of the materials, and then that's when I start letting it sit. What's going to happen is you are going to, somehow the invertebrates naturally come, and they all have a different job. Some of them are chewers, some of them we get the droppings from them. And
Like earthworms.
Yes, and the
So it'll-
earthworms tunnel through, making airspace and things like that. So don't think there's something wrong with your compost if you find all these little insects in.
insects and bugs and little crawling
That's
things.
what's helping to break it down. The other thing that breaks it down, of course, is heat. But in this area, heat can be an enemy in a way because it is so very, very dry here. And when you so you have to keep it more regular than other places. If you read different things on the internet, it'll say cover it to keep it from getting so wet. Well, that's not the case here. I will cover it to try to keep some dampness in.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then you just let it work, and as it works, it starts going down. So
Okay,
I just
so
watch it.
It just as it decomposes, it
Right.
kind of sinks.
It does sink, and then I can either leave that and let the whole bin just work itself, or I can, if I'm not in a hurry, I can just keep adding in more and more. That just means it's going to take longer and longer. There's two composting methods. One is called a cool method, and one is a hot.
Okay.
A compost bin should be about 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. But it's not going to get the heat and build the heat and keep the heat. It's going to be more of a cool compost, so it does take longer to get it.
Okay.
So you
And
have
I
to
can
have some
imagine that
patience.
that heat comes just from the decaying material. So
Right.
it, when all the conditions are right, it's probably going to be pretty warm.
It is, and the nitrogen, this green grass, is what really heats it up quickly. It just doesn't hold very long. And as far as when to turn it, I kind of watch for it to go down, and maybe when it's gone down about that far, then I turn it. If you turn it too often, you're messing up the cycle, and it doesn't have time to work.
Okay.
So, and the other thing is when you turn it, it's very helpful to have another empty container, so that I can use a
So you
pitchfork,
can
put it from
pitch it
one
over.
to the other, and that's going to take the top to the bottom, and also the sides, just because of this area, is going to stay dry. So the more that you can work in, the better results you're going to have. But just give it some time.
Almost sounds a little bit like kneading bread dough.
It
and
does.
Trying to get it all mixed together
It
and make
does.
sure all the flour is
That's
mixed
right.
in.
That's right.
That's right.
It is.
This is really helpful. Now, Arla, tell us what it is, once you get a batch of compost, and we can talk about how long that might take. How long might that take?
Mine really can take up Oh, if I use the same compost and I don't, in the same container, and I don't keep adding to it with new browns and new greens, it's going to be faster. But as
Okay.
far as giving you a definite answer, I'd watch it, because when it's black and when some of the things are unrecognizable, then you know that it's ready.
So
And
you don't see the eggshells and the pieces
egg,
of fruit. and all that.
eggshells.
Sometimes you do, I guess.
Yes, they absolutely disintegrate very slowly. But what I like to do if I'm wanting to use it, I don't check the outsides. I check in the middle. I move the top and check in the middle, and I'll dig out of the middle and get the compost that I want.
That sounds great. Well, what I was going to ask you before I got sidetracked there was, what do you do with the compost once you have it?
Okay, once that I have the compost, I use it for several different things. I use it for potting my plants.
Okay.
I use it out on the lawn where I've got low spots and I want to try to make it more level. I use it around my plants. I cannot work it into the soil around my plants because my plants are too close together. Now, I don't have the space for a vegetable garden like you do, so what do you do with your vegetable garden as far as compost?
I have compost as well, as you know, and sometimes I just use the compost that's even not totally brown. You know, I can still see even bits of leaves, and when I clean out my vegetable garden, I just spread those leaves and grass, and I don't keep kitchen stuff in it because I don't want to draw mice and rats and things like that. But I will just put the almost finished compost all over the top of the vegetable garden, particularly at this time of year, because it can just be there through the winter as a mulch, and then come spring I'll turn the soil a little bit, and that just really helps condition the soil and get it ready for spring planting. Arla, you said that you use this container, plastic container, to show us, demonstrate for us how to do it. But what would people use to actually build their composting?
One excellent container would be a trash can.
Okay.
Any color would be fine, but the black's going to absorb more heat. And you'll take your trash can, you'll drill holes in the bottom so that the water has a way to escape. If you have two trash cans, it's easier then to turn it from one to the other.
All right, that sounds good. And now, Arla, you said that you use compost at times in pots. How fine does the compost need to be? Does it need to be like soil that you get as potting soil?
I like for it to be broken down a lot. So what I've done is, like at resale stores and stuff, I'll find things that I can use to sift my compost. And
So
what
you
I will,
sift it.
I sift mine, I pour it in, and I can shake it and let it come through. And what remains that is big, then I would just throw into the other container and put it back into the compost
Put it back
bin.
in the compost.
But this way, when I have sifted it, I have really fine compost. So I really like that. You don't have to. And you said that you used yours without sifting it, so I have some here that's not sifted. And you can see a few things that are left in it, but it's wonderful black in color. So it's ready to go.
Yeah, and that's about what I put on my vegetable garden, is because you can see little bits of leaves kind of, but it's
Right.
still well decomposed.
Yes, it's ready to go.
Great. Good. Thank you so much. Arla, what's the benefit and reward for composting? This sounds like lots of work.
It is a lot of work. If you're going to do it, you need to be very committed to do it. It's not something that you want to just put out in the alley, I don't think, because out of sight, out of mind. But if you have it where you can work with it and add to it, the rewards are great, because you're going to have the best soil amendment ever. You're going to have the best potting soil, and your neighbors will love you when you give it to them.
All this work is great exercise too.
Yes, it is. Yes, you'll find when you're turning it with a pitchfork, you're building up muscles.
That's
But
great.
put me outside and I'm happy. I love.
And then you
getting
also
exercise.
mentioned the benefit of low cost.
Yes, it's absolutely zero cost if you want it to be.
Arla, thank you so
You're
much for
welcome.
showing us all these things that we can do, particularly the compost demonstration. But just appreciate knowing that
Sure.
we can actually be helpers in making the soil better for
We
our
sure can.
gardening. Good. Thank you all for being with us today, and come back and join us for another episode of Gardening Tips for Lubbock.